Hey everyone, this video is going to cover the storm chances over the next few days as we do have a bit of an active time of things setting up. Let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center maps and then I'll start getting into more of the data here beyond that. So let's take a look at the map for today. We do have a slight risk of severe storms across portions of the Mid-Atlantic region, the Delmarva. This extends over towards parts of the lower Ohio Valley today. We have this frontal boundary. It's basically a cold front that's slowly sagging to the south across this area, and that's going to initiate storms for today, and it becomes more of a stationary front up here, and we have a slight risk from the Dakotas through Iowa and into western Illinois, and that's going to be especially for later on tonight and into early tomorrow morning for that area where we needed to watch for some severe storms as that front begins to lift back to the north as a warm front. And we see a system starting to develop here on the lee side of the Rockies tonight. And looking at the severe weather outlook for Wednesday, this is the day we are really watching. We have a moderate risk of severe storms now in place. This is the level 4 risk from the Storm Prediction Center up here across portions of northern Indiana, northeast Illinois, southeast Wisconsin, southern parts of Michigan, and northwest Ohio. We're going to see the potential for pretty widespread severe weather tomorrow, not just during the day, but we're also going to be watching tomorrow night. We could see a decent round of damaging wind come through as we see perhaps several complexes of storms developing and pushing through this area, and we'll talk more about that here later in this video. And then on Thursday, basically that system that's going to be responsible for all the wind potential across the Midwest. That system, that surface low is going to shift eastward. We'll see a trailing front. We'll still have the risk for some severe storms again on Thursday across the Mid-Atlantic region, similar to today in a way, where the risk will be a slight risk across parts of the Mid-Atlantic. This does extend through parts of the Ohio Valley. And I would not be surprised to see that slight risk shifted farther west with time, but of course, at this point, there's still some uncertainty. And this is a pretty wide marginal risk that goes all the way out through portions of the Central Rockies here on Thursday. So let's take a look at the radar this morning. We do have a few showers and storms out there across portions of Missouri. This is a little complex of storms shifting to the south and east. A few more storms starting to fire up here. We had storms last night across central parts of Indiana. Those storms have left a little boundary through here. Can't really see it, but that boundary is going to be kind of an initiation point for the clouds to bubble up and grow into some storms early on this afternoon. And then we're going to have the risk for some severe storms today across this area through here. And again, of course, we're watching this area out here as well. And then more storms to develop across the Dakotas and into Iowa as we head into later on tonight. And let's take a look at some of the severe weather parameters for today. Looking at the instability, this is surface-based instability. You see they kind of peak out around 3,000 joules per kilogram here in eastern Kentucky. So a decent amount of instability, so a fairly unstable atmosphere here. And you can see how the instability values sharply drop once you get north of here across portions of central and west Indiana and Illinois, looking pretty good for today. And then we see some unstable air here across portions of Nebraska through Missouri. And we already saw that complex of storms through here this morning across portions of Missouri. Winds today with a wind shear in place. Basically, wind shear is something we look at to see the sustainability of those storms. Can those storms maintain an updraft and downdraft? Can they remain separated enough to keep these storms going for a good distance or go on for some time? And looking at the wind shear today, we see some decent winds here, around 40 to 50 knots here across portions of the Mid-Atlantic. And really anything above 40 knots is really what we see become favorable for severe weather to kind of sustain itself. And so we do see that here across portions of Pennsylvania, through southeast Ohio, through West Virginia, through parts of northern Virginia today, throughout parts of Maryland, New Jersey. That's an area we'll be watching today. And notice how the winds really slack off here across central Kentucky. And we see that slight risk kind of extend right in through here. This tells me that the storms through this area will be slower moving. They'll likely be more of a pulse type storm scenario where their storms are fairly isolated. They could drop very heavy rain. They probably won't last all that long for any individual area, but they could certainly bring down some gusty winds and some very heavy rain in a short period of time, and localized spots across central and southern Kentucky today. and also across portions of the Central Plains. Some decent wind fields today, as we do have that frontal boundary just kind of drape through here, a stationary front, and then tonight we're going to see it become a warm front in response and lift to the north in response to a developing surface low here on the lee of the Rockies here in the Central High Plains for tonight. And again, tomorrow is the day we are really looking at for potential for more widespread severe storms. Before I get to that, I want to show you what some of the short-range models are showing for today across this area. This is the HRRR model. Let me go forward here. This is by 10 this morning, and you can see a few storms out there across parts of West Virginia and the southern Pennsylvania. A few more storms bubbling up here in Virginia. We're going forward throughout the afternoon hours. Here we are by 2 o'clock today, Eastern Time. A few storms down here across portions of northwest Kentucky, showing up several scattered storms bubbling up here. Again, like I said, these will likely be more of the pulse type storms. Very slow moving, can dump some heavy rain in the localized spot, bring some gusty, damaging wind. Can't be rolled out here in central and southern Kentucky. And then once you get to eastern Kentucky and over towards the West Virginia and parts of the Middle Atlantic region here, these storms will likely be able to develop and maintain themselves. Damaging winds, large hail, biggest threats, tornado cannot be rolled out either for today in this area as well. And as we go forward throughout the evening hours, here we are by 3, 4, 5. Here's 6 o'clock Central, or excuse me, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Still dealing with those storms that will develop and begin to make their move south and eastward with time as we go forward throughout the evening hours. So here we are by 8 o'clock. Still dealing with storms, mostly now across portions of Virginia here, over towards parts of Maryland, and going into 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. We'll see the activity start to push closer to the Atlantic coast by that point. And I'll show you the NAM model going into tonight and Wednesday, because that's certainly a time frame we will be watching for storms to kind of really start to develop across the plains. And that's just setting the stage for what will be coming for tomorrow. So let me kind of skip forward here. I showed you what the HRRR model is showing for the rest of today and this evening. Heading into tonight, we see this development of a surface low here, excuse me, across South Dakota. Storms starting to develop here throughout the evening hours into the overnight hours across parts of the Dakotas. A few storms starting to bubble up here, potentially across parts of Iowa and Illinois. And that'll be especially the case once we get past midnight or so. Watch how these storms really start to develop here across portions of northeast Iowa through Minnesota, with southwest Wisconsin, through central and northern Illinois, through southern parts of Indiana. This is going to be that warm front here. We have this low pressure here, warm front drape through here. That front's going to be slowly lifting to the north. We see some decent wind fields. I'll show you the wind fields here early tomorrow morning. And you can see we do have some wind energy here. That's that warm front that I was just talking about here. And so we could see some damaging winds with some of these storms, maybe some large hail later on tonight and into the first thing on Wednesday with some of those storms. And going forward, this is by the time we get to about daybreak on Wednesday, we'll see some storms pushing through parts of, this will be that front draped from northwest to southeast, from Minnesota through Iowa, through Wisconsin, and all the way down into parts of northeast Kentucky. Scattered storms. We could see more of perhaps an MCS type deal. Storms, kind of a complex of storms that pushes to the southeast. I know that the 4 kilometer NAM is showing more of just a scattered variety of storms. That's just something we'll have to keep an eye on as we get, of course, closer in time. And into the day on Wednesday, we're going to see this surface low here slowly continuing to push off to the east. This is by the time we get to the late morning hours tomorrow. The surface low is in Iowa. We see this warm front drape through here. That will be, the warm front will be the train tracks basically for these storms to ride along tomorrow. And going into tomorrow afternoon, surface low starts to make more progress to the east. Scattered storms across this area. And again, tomorrow during the day, damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes all are possibility with these storms. And once again, I'm just showing you where the placement is. That severe risk is for tomorrow. Chicago, pretty much right in that bullseye. That goes up through about Lansing, Michigan, through Angola, Indiana, South Bend, Fort Wayne. That's certainly an area that's kind of in that bullseye at this point for the highest likelihood of severe storms tomorrow. And going throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours, we begin to see more of this mesoscale convective system, perhaps a mesoscale convective vortex developing here tomorrow evening. The surface low is pretty much over northern Illinois and the Chicago area. We begin to see that signs of that strong complex of storms with a damaging wind potential here across Chicagoland early tomorrow evening. This would be about 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And as we get towards 9 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Eastern, look at this complex of storms that will move through. This could be a setup where we see a damaging wind swath go on for miles and miles and miles and miles, because the atmosphere setup will be very favorable for these storms to continue to maintain themselves and really push off to the, for long distances, and these storms will be moving very, very quickly tomorrow night. So while you're sleeping here, perhaps across Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, southeast Michigan, definitely want to be aware that there could be some pretty serious, potent storms tomorrow night. Let me show you the wind fields tomorrow night, because it's very impressive. And I'm going to show you, first off, tomorrow afternoon, begin to see signs of that mesoscale convective system up here near Chicago by tomorrow evening. Like I just showed you, some pretty crazy wind fields showing up here. That bullseye through here is over 100, getting up about 100 miles per hour winds. This will be about 4,500 feet above the surface. Tomorrow night, look at these wind fields. Crazy stuff here. We're talking about winds here like 70, 80 miles per hour over multiple counties. So this system that we see move through tomorrow night will have the potential to produce, 60, 70, 80 mile per hour winds at least, if not more, for large swaths. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has that moderate risk out for tomorrow, again, across northern parts of Indiana through here, northwest Ohio, Illinois, parts of southern Michigan. That's the area we'll expect some pretty severe storms and some damaging winds to move through tomorrow night. And then what we're going to see is that complex of storms start to continue to make its way south and eastward, and eventually by Thursday morning, it starts to make its way towards the mid-Atlantic. So here we go by Thursday morning. This is by 8 o'clock Eastern Time. That complex of storms is still probably holding itself together here, and there's uncertainty just how long it's going to maintain itself. But this can maintain itself for quite some time. So by Thursday morning, Pittsburgh, the low is just east of Pittsburgh, the surface low. We still have this complex of storms moving through. And what could happen is we see this low pressure move off to the east coast by Thursday afternoon. We see this trailing boundary here that's going to help to continue to initiate storms across the mid-Atlantic Thursday afternoon. So again on Thursday, I'll once again show you that risk on Thursday. And we do see a slight risk here across a good part of the mid-Atlantic here. This goes all the way through parts of Kentucky. But I do see signs based on the fact that there's going to be a lot of instability Thursday, even farther off to the west. So I would not be surprised to see the slight risk shifting more like in this area through here as well as we get closer in time. And maybe even an upgrade to an enhanced risk through here as well for some of these areas. That's something we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens as more data comes in over the next couple of days. But once again, the system will we'll see basically this trailing front storms developing Thursday afternoon through Thursday evening. Those storms, we'll see kind of this broken line. It kind of shifts off to the south and eastward direction by the time we get to Thursday night. And then we should be paving the way for a little bit, the weather starting to settle down a bit beyond that. But certainly a very, very active time of things here over the next few days. We want to make sure you stay well.